Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan for another Inside the Birds. That's, of course, presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Well, Adam, there's a phrase we like to say, one butt kicking deserves another. And you kicked my butt when we did the offensive NFC East draft. But clearly, the people have spoken after a few days of poll voting on Twitter and other platforms. People like my NFC East defensive draft more than yours. So I guess that's what we're fit to be tied, my friend.
So do I. No, as I said when we were done, I said your D line's just way better than mine. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah,
there are positions where I was better. So we had a lot of people say we got to do some sort of a snake draft, which I'm like, yeah, but that's not the way NFL draft is. But
it's just two people. If I felt like even though the NFL draft is 30 and they don't snake, that's because of how you finished. You know, sure. I just felt like two people a snake wouldn't really matter that much.
I don't know, but see you. And again, I'm not complaining at all because I had an advantage on the offense. We may want to do that. We'll revisit it, and we'll get to Checo involved with Andrew. We'll get Andrew involved in a future one of these. But it was a great idea. So what Geoff's talking about, if you guys didn't see it, depending on how you're consuming the show. So we did an offensive, defensive, NFC East-only draft. And we, if you picked, then I took what I thought was the next best player. You would take the next best player. You know, it's sort of like a fancy draft, but
right.
And there was strategy because, when you took, you got Parsons, right? Did you not?
I took him number 1 overall in our defensive draft. Yeah.
Right. So it kind of forced me, okay, I have to take the second best pass rusher in the NFC East, right?
Right. Or else I would have taken him and then you would have really been screwed for it.
Right.
You know.
Exactly. So
yeah. And just like when you took Jalen Hurts in our offensive draft, because you can only draft one quarterback, I did not feel the need to take any other quarterback until my last pick. So that's why I went heavy on the offensive line. That was the fun part of it for us, was really strategizing to try to put together the best team that we could.
So before we get started, because if you do a fantasy draft, one of the things I like to do is I like to see because I like to draft my quarterbacks late. If you have, I check the other 11, usually I'm in 12-team drafts. So I look at the other 11 teams, like, okay, how many teams have not taken a quarterback yet? Because that'll tell you who's probably going to be available. Obviously, if you've been in with these guys in drafts for years, it becomes more predictable, but more often than not, people will draft quarterbacks late in fantasy, probably between 7th and 10th rounds.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where Hurts goes. We'll do probably a fantasy show. Maybe we'll get John Hansen, our friend from FantasyPoints.com, involved in August or late July. But it'll be interesting to see where Fields goes because there's a lot of hype on him with DJ Moore, obviously in the trade with Carolina. Mm-hmm. And who are those breakout quarterbacks? It's always interesting to see who people like there.
You know, it's just interesting you brought that up. I don't know if I was talking to someone or just sort of, I was listening. That's what it was. I was listening to a sports radio show, and they were doing their top 10 quarterbacks, right, entering 2023. And most of the first 6 or 7 were pretty obvious, right? It was your, whether it was Jalen Hurts or Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, once you get, there are those 5 or 6. And then everybody's, the 7 through 10 was interesting. Like some would say, hey, Matt Stafford had one bad year, but he's still a really good quarterback, and he would be in there. And then others would say, I'm trying to think of a quarterback who found his way to the Russell Wilson. I kind of expect Russell Wilson, who wouldn't be in your top 10. You could do 10 people's top 10s, and he may only be in 1 or 2, but certainly
may not be in any
or in none, right? Up until last year, he was like top 5, right?
Of course. Right.
And it made me think how many quarterbacks that I didn't hear who are at one point in that conversation and could get back into that conversation very quickly, like a Russell Wilson, like an Aaron Rodgers, who did, I didn't hear his name, but he's certainly, to me, a guy who's very, very talented. And with the right pieces around him with the Jets, could I see him having a top 5, top 10 quarterback season? I absolutely could, as long as their offensive line is decent. Now, I know he's a little bit older, and as long as he stays healthy, but when I watched him play, I didn't think he was so far removed from just 2 years ago when he was a 2 straight MVP that he couldn't get back there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
it's
there are some other guys in that boat who can be really good. They're almost like forgotten about, and I think Russell Wilson's one of them. That Deshaun Watson, another perfect example of a guy who has missed basically the last 2 years, has just not been himself, but he could get back in the top 5 category really quickly.
I know it seems like forever, but in 2020, the team was terrible. Their defense was not competitive with the Texans. He was incredible. He was awesome. He played on a bad football team. It's not his fault.
Exactly.
It's funny because with the Chris Sims stuff, I know Eagle fans are so mad at him.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you and I should do our own ranking.
Dak Prescott is another guy who had a bad year last year with all the interceptions. So he wasn't in the two or three people who I was listening to, but he could be in there. So I mean, there's just like 5 or 6 quarterbacks I think that could, if they played better than last year, could make the NFL, because last year was not a very competitive year. I mean, there was the Eagles, right? There was the Chiefs and the Bills. We said it all year long. And the Bengals came on finally after a tough first 6 weeks. The Bengals came on, but after that, we were looking at playoff teams like the Vikings, like the Giants, like the Ravens the Ravens did make the playoffs, right? But they, Lamar was hurt all year. Lamar's another one of those guys who could snap back. But it just to me, there weren't that many very good teams in the NFL last year. There were about 4. But if things go differently for some quarterbacks this year, Derek Carr being another one, I feel like the NFL might be a little bit better top to bottom than last year.
Well, I'd actually say there are probably 6 to 8 good teams. If you're talking about Buffalo, you're talking about Cincinnati, you talk about Jacksonville, you had to put them in there. I know they came out.
Yeah, see, that was an interesting one where people didn't know what to do with Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was, look, he was awful in year 1, but the coaching was dreadful. He was a breakout player. They were a breakout team. No one had that. Right. The Chiefs obviously won the Super Bowl. They're very good. Eagles are excellent. Well, they were excellent. They should be again. The Niners were tremendous. It's just their quarterback got hurt. So yeah, you're going to have 6 teams. But then, of course, with the Rodgers trade, don't know about the Packers anymore.
Right.
And then we're going to have Baltimore with Lamar. There's that feeling with the Ravens. It's one of the reasons why they extended his contract and because they re-signed him and extended long. It's because they believe in him. They've helped him. So it's going to be a fun year. This is I didn't know we were going this direction. This is actually a great discussion.
Yeah.
Like at NFL radio right now.
The guy I'm most intrigued about is Russ. I mean, he fell so quickly. It was almost Carson Wentz-esque, right? But unlike Carson, although Russ is kind of known as being a little bit awkward and weird too, I just think that with the weapons around him and that coach, that there's a better chance for him to get back to playing. He may not be like all pro or MVP caliber, but good enough to make that team a playoff team with that coach and that weaponry around him.
Oh, the receiver and tight end group, the defense. No, it's Wilson was dreadful last season. Coaching wasn't very good. They let him get away with everything. That's why Hackett got fired.
Right.
He ran a fantasy camp there. It was a joke basically. What I heard last summer, their training camp was. It was just not competitive enough. It was not. He ran you can't do that. You can't get veterans can't get over on the head coach, and that it was just bad. But when you look at this situation at quarterback, one thing before we get started here, it's funny. The Cowboys and Dak signed for 2024. They want to extend his contract. Now I get it. He's only 30 in July, so that's nothing in NFL years. He probably can play if he's healthy 8 to 10 more years, based on the way these quarterbacks play now. But you mentioned it, man. He was awful with the picks, and I know he took responsibility for it. And Mike McCarthy now is going to call the plays. But look, their roster's loaded. They helped him at receiver. But that just because you've helped a guy at a position doesn't mean he's going to be better. It's on the player.
Right.
The player. He pressed a lot last season.
100%. All right. For our Patreon subscribers, Rick Spielman was amazing for us. So if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, and you want to hear what a general manager, a guy who's been in the game for over 20 some odd years, in the front office,
30,
feels about personnel and how to evaluate players from a front office standpoint during OTAs. Rick was unbelievable about it. And by the way, did you happen to see what because I think he spoke off camera on us just in general, because Rick lives down in Southwest Florida, where the area that got ravaged by that hurricane, what was it, Ian? I forget the name of it. But I don't know if you saw it. He put it on Twitter. The Vikings, the Wilf family who owns the Vikings, they found out that he lost apparently all of his game balls from when he was GM of the Vikings, and they made new ones and sent him a box of new game balls.
Yeah. So because Rick, talked, I guess I didn't know that. So we can add Rick. We spoke to Rick off camera, and Rick's he moved to, after he left the Vikings, he moved to a part of Florida. Unfortunately, got destroyed. Was it a year ago?
I think it was a year. Yeah, it was. Yeah, shortly after he moved there, I believe.
But they're doing better, and it's gonna, they got to get their house rebuilt, and he lost a lot of stuff. But
yeah,
had a good attitude over everything. His family's doing well. He's doing well, and it's really interesting. I didn't know him super well, but I've known him a long time. We didn't talk a lot, but he really enjoys the media stuff.
Yeah.
To the point where I wonder if he'll wind up doing games, college games, or pro games. Who knows? But
yeah,
who knew? And what did he say? I think he said it on camera. Or maybe he said it off camera too, or both. What did he say? He's another.
He's something about idiots and morons. In the media. And now he's one of them, and it pays to be an idiot and a moron. It's a lot easier than being a GM, right?
It was so great when he said it. And the funniest thing, if you watch the Patreon, in the back, you could see it if you kind of close in. You could see he was in Lions camp, right, with his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick, I don't know Rick with a mustache. It's the funniest thing.
Doesn't even look like
really
him.
You? And he goes, yeah, it was me. And then he told the story when he was with the Chargers as a UDFA, and who he had to cover in training camp, and he kind of was in awe.
And that's right. That was a great story.
Ken Winslow. Yeah.
Yes. So we do this once a month on Patreon. We try to get with either a former NFL executive, an assistant coach, a head coach. We've gotten all stages of personnel. We've had a scout on, a former NFL scout, area scout. So it's really good stuff. If you want to subscribe, of course, you go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And this month, we're working on another great educational guest, because that's what it's all about, educating people on the jobs that these people hold in the NFL and how they view it.
This guy. It's going to happen. We've never talked to this guy before. In fact, I don't think I have. But someone tipped me off to this guy having ties to the Eagles coaches, and to say he could help our subscribers on Patreon learn about one of the Eagles sides of the ball and the scheme that they're running, to say the least. And I'm going to leave it at. We're not going to give it away because we try not to. But
yes,
this one is. This one is fascinating. I have someone who knows this guy, this former coach. So anyway, we look forward to doing that, and we do this every month. We've done this since we've had Patreon. We've always had a former GM, scout, personnel executive, or a head coach. We had Mark Trespin on, right? We had Mark Trespin on.
Yeah. All right, and of course we do the live stream. That we do that once a month as well, and along with a 30-minute chat on Discord that Adam does every Wednesday. So make sure you're taking part in that. Adam gives a lot of great nuggets in that chat on Wednesday at 8 o'clock is when you usually do it, right?
Yes, yeah, and then I would say now training camp will be a little challenging because particularly when I fly, but yeah, we'll do it at least until training camp at 8 Eastern on Wednesday. Yes.
All right, there you go. So the Eagles ended OTAs. They had only 6 practices. One of them was moved. The last one that was open to the media was moved inside the bubble for. Well, this was a first for all of us as reporters. Moved inside the bubble for air quality index reasons, and rightfully so. It was really bad out there, so they moved inside the bubble. Had their practice there. It's not that I don't think the bubble practices are as competitive as the outdoor practices, Adam, but it's a more condensed area as far as media viewing. It's condensed. You have certain guys who hate the turf. We always talk about how Brian Westbrook didn't even want to. Well, it's not even his choice. They didn't want him practicing on the turf because
they did replace it over the years, but I don't know how much softer it is because I had a left meniscus tear, very, very slight, like real slight. Mm-hmm. And I basically, after half an hour, sometimes I couldn't take it. I was just like, this thing's like a rock, this floor.
Right.
And this is where, oh boy, the safety was awful. I've told the story before.
Marlon Jackson.
You got it. He tore it in front of me. And I've never heard this before. I've heard players get hurt. I was at a Colts practice years ago, and a guy, wasn't Deion Kane, but another offensive player screamed when he got hurt. And when hearing when hearing Marlon Jackson was his last time, I don't think he ever came back. He tore his
No,
Achilles.
I don't think he did. It was rough
Yeah,
because that was not his first ACL tear. That was I
was
think
it
the
an
one
ACL or Achilles?
Achilles. I'm sorry, Achilles. That was the one that sort of broke the camel's back.
Awful.
I think. Yeah.
Awful. And that thing was so hard.
Yeah.
And you just talk about B West. I don't see, and he had the B West of the ACL in college and the swelling. That was what really shortened his career. Was the swelling. It's terrible for that. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's just in general, it's a different viewpoint for the quarterback. Everything is different. So I know, the numbers say Jalen Hurts threw a few interceptions and whatever. I mean, I it's not like, again, they if they did 30 total plays, I would be surprised if it was that much.
And so few starters are participating. But the key is, though, it's very important for young players, because you want to see where the players are. You're not worried about whether they made a play or not. That doesn't matter. What you're looking for, are they lined up correctly, what kind of shape they're in, and how they process. If they don't meet these three things in OTAs, that's a big demerit. I mean, that's a negative. I mean, if you just want to make sure they'll line up correctly. Look, if the ball's thrown at them, they don't catch it. Okay, great.
Right.
Okay. You mark that down. You're not worrying about whether they made a play or not. You're worrying about, did they catch the ball was thrown to them? Sure. But are they lined up correctly? That is so important, for particularly the UDFAs here, because Eagles have a history of these guys either making it or being in their practice squad and working their way up. And then, okay, so the first couple of practices, if they didn't work well for them, later, as you get through the 5th and 6th practices, how do they do? Do they improve that? And then if they did, how do they take it the next 5-6 weeks until they're off until late July?
Yeah, and it's funny. Nick Sirianni and I talked about that. They asked, "What do you look for?" With just relatively few practices, he goes, "Oh, hopefully everybody comes back healthy and fine. No issues when they come back for training camp," which is every coach's desire, is that the next 6 weeks or 7 weeks, whatever it is, maybe even longer, go smoothly. And that, like you mentioned, that everybody comes and is well conditioned. Now, in the OTA that I was able to witness, nobody stuck out to me, and this has happened before, but nobody stuck out to me as like dragging ass, like they weren't up to speed. Because I did mention in the last podcast, I felt that practice moved fast, at a good pace, and I imagine the same thing happened when they move indoors. I actually think they go faster because there's less field to work with. So you have, like I said, everybody's more condensed in one area, so you don't have to run from field to field. You're off, you're on, you're off, you're on. So I imagine the pace was as fast, if not faster, indoors when they moved indoors. Just the overall pace of practice. And I thought when I was there that no one looked like they were out of shape, or no, I didn't even really hear too much. And I thought this was interesting compared to, say, 2 years ago, when Nick Sirianni was first head coach. We saw Nick had to coach his coaches. We saw Nick had to coach his players. I definitely saw coaching, but I did not see a whole lot of barking type coaching, like you're in the wrong spot or you're not doing the right thing. So, but again, that'll be in training camp. They only ran a select number of plays in OTAs. They're really just, it's like getting your feet wet nowadays. Well, it's really just like getting an understanding of what's going on.
Right. It's all passing. It's all 7-7. You can do 11-11, but teams don't do it because 11-11 gets too physical.
Right.
And you don't want to get docked, as Rick Spielman told us on our Patreon. We talked about so much stuff we didn't plan on talking about, and Rick just went there. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
We talked about, this is an unbelievable, I'm going to give you guys, this is awesome. I never heard this before. He said that he was so concerned about losing practices and getting in trouble from the NFLPA because they would show up unexpectedly, that they would make sure when the team photographer would take pictures to put on social, that there was no, when they take the picture, there was no, you weren't touching the defender, or the defender wasn't touching the offensive player. He was that worried about it. Think about that.
Yeah, that's a paranoia level right there.
Yeah.
And I think the Ravens are the Ravens are the team that's been docked like multiple times for violations of OTAs.
Most physical training camp, but it's not close. So I've gone there since 2002. Even with Brian Billick, and then of course John Harbaugh. They run the longest training camp practices. I don't know what the rules are. I'm telling you, they've done 2.5 to 3 hours before.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Because who was it? Jason Avant, maybe, and Quentin Michael. They've been on with us before, and then I've heard them talking about it on Q&A. They both had to play special teams. These guys who were not high draft picks and not, well, Quentin was a starter, but it took a while, right? And they would recall days in Lehigh when Harbaugh would have them out for. Remember Lehigh, you would see the two-a-days. You'd have the morning practice and the afternoon special teams practice. And Q and J would be like, it felt like the afternoon special teams practice was 3 times longer than the morning practice. And well, it wasn't. It was just 2 times longer. That's what it just felt 3 times longer. But Harbs would have them out there forever and beyond, man. And it's hot up there. That's rough.
Oh, Lehigh.
Yeah, Lehigh. Yeah, he'd have them out there in the middle of August, just like, and it's not like they're doing special teams. It's like running down punts and things like. It's not even fun stuff for those guys, you know.
Were they in t-shirt? Were they in jerseys?
Shorts and shells for special teams.
It wasn't or was?
For special teams practices, you'd be in shorts and shells.
I thought so. Okay, I thought so.
And you'd have your helmet, you have your shorts and shells, yeah.
But it's funny you say that about Lehigh, because I rarely remember a time when it was like under 80 degrees. And even if it was humid as hell out there.
Yeah.
But lately in NovaCare, the last couple of years, although I remember when I was out west, the season ticket holders who get in, the select group, a couple hundred get into practice at NovaCare, and they were although they got water, they were complaining about how hot it was. I guess maybe I don't know if you were there then, but it is bad. It could get really bad, and I'm always interested to see, because Sirianni has these odd ass times in OTAs. Today's practice is at 12:50. Like what is that about?
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a Philly start time at 7:07.
Yeah. Well, by the way, do you know why baseball changed? Like they do 6:45. Today's game will start at 6:35. What is that? Is there some sort
I have
of
no clue. I know before schools are out is when, a while back they decided to go to 6 o'clock hour starts instead of 7 o'clock hour.
Okay.
To try to get better attendance. But why it starts at like 6:43 sometimes, or 7:07 or 6:08.
Yeah, exactly. What is
who knows? It probably has something to do with TV and the commercial times and everything like that.
I was thinking of TBS used to do that for years, 6:08 or 6:07.
Yeah.
6:05 for wrestling.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So one thing I talked about on the last podcast, Adam, and then it kind of came up in the press conference, was when I was there, I saw Quez Watkins lining up at both slot and outside. And it seemed like when I saw him at outside, it was when they were in a 12 personnel package, and either AJ or Devontae would come off and Quez would play outside in the 12 personnel package, because obviously you're trying to get as much of a speed element as you can out there. If you're going to have 2 tight ends on the field, you need somebody that can stress the safeties. And Nick Sirianni was very, very effusive in his praise for Quez Watkins, talked about the chip on his shoulder. And I think it was really funny how he chose his words. Nick Sirianni, he said he sensed, he goes, Quez didn't say anything. I just sense that he's aware of the public criticism around him. So, I think that's really funny. Well, how do you sense that? Do you just like look at a guy and be like, he seems bothered today? I don't know.
How would he know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Body language, or maybe. Well, the word around the team is, as explained to us last week, is that he's more focused, and I think part of it. This is something, just talking to coaches, they love this when a guy's on the final year of his rookie deal. They got a chip. They know they don't have an extension yet, so they know this is it. They got to play one. This guy's a backup,
right?
And now they've got competition with Zacchaeus in here, Olamide Zacchaeus, local product.
Well, that's the funny part, because did you sense Nick Sirianni that Quez Watkins was more focused because of quote unquote, the bad guy fans and media who are all, or is it because maybe you brought in Olamide Zacchaeus, who plays what's that?
OZ,
yeah. Is it the media and fans, or is it the actions of the franchise itself that have made Quez Watkins come back? It doesn't really matter. It's all, or exactly
all of it. Yeah, and so what you saw from what we're told is correct. Watkins was moved around inside and outside. OZ he played the Z position, but here's the problem: they're 7-on-7, so. The Z though moves. The X normally does not move.
Yeah.
He played Z, he played inside. Now, the thing is here, we'll be looking to find out what do they do prior to late July. Do they sign a true X to back up Brown? Have Watkins do that? Because OZ's not an X. He's too small.
Right. I think you and I are on the same vein here, is that Quez Watkins he's best as a backup or just a backup outside receiver. Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I get it. If you could find a slot that could run, that's great. But he's not a natural slot. Your slot guy. You're Vaughn. You're Julian Edelman. Edelman could play both, but he was way better inside. You go back to all the good slots over the last 15 years. They just get open very, very quick. They just have this ability to make like D Hop. D Hop is not. He's a Z. He's probably played everything. Well, we could ask Greg Cosell that on the road, but I know coaches work with him, said that you could just move him everywhere and he can handle it.
Right.
But he's a possession receiver. Like you have to know what a guy is. And we rarely criticize Sirianni. He's been so amazing, but that was a mistake last year. It's one of the very few. And I know it's a small one, but who knows if they would have had a natural slot. And this is, as we get into the show, and leads perfectly to what we're going to talk about in the show. Like Covey again, Britton Covey looked good when he was out there. Well, he looked, the one nugget we had last year, we didn't have a lot of strong nuggets come out of OTAs because we try not to. We've learned our lesson. You and I've covered this business for 20 years or so, but he really looked good. And when you and I were there last year, he looked good.
Yes.
We wound up not doing a damn thing as a slot receiver. They never let him play slot. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think either Watkins or Covey can give the Eagles what they once got, say, out of Nelson Aguilar, who was, he failed 2 years as an outside receiver, even though he has outside speed, but he has what we call inside hands, right? He does not deep track the ball well, but he's an excellent route runner and he has vertical speed. So when you put him in the slot, you were sort of combining the best of both worlds. You were getting precision route running with a guy who can get open quickly over the middle, and that was easier for him to catch because he didn't have to track the ball when it's thrown over the middle. I don't think Watkins has the same kind of footwork and that short area ability as a Nelson Aguilar, and I don't think Covey, he has better footwork and probably and what I saw was a better ability to catch and run, at least in one practice. But obviously vertical speed, I mean, he's quick. I don't know if he has vertical speed the way Aguilar could just get open down the field, down the seams.
Who are we talking about? Quez, you mean?
No, now I'm talking about Covey. He's got good vertical quickness.
No, he's a short area quick. His short area quicks are phenomenal. In fact, so I don't know if we ever talked about this before. So on Covey, I'm told, I'm going to say, did he go to Utah? Is that where he went? Where did he go?
He went to Utah, yes.
Okay. They were on him his final year at Utah for whatever. I don't know, it was their scout or whoever. I'm not sure, but they apparently knew about him. They were hoping that he wasn't drafted because they felt that this kid could be a dynamic slot. And his short area quickness is something else, but I don't know what happened. We're going to look into this. I want to know what happened last summer, because it's pretty obvious when you and I were at training camp, it wasn't happening for him. Like he dropped off, and I get it. You can be physical in training camp. Okay. No question. It's a major difference from OTAs of the many differences. But the quickness is there. I'm just assuming he couldn't get open, but we'll look into that. But that was the one disappointment, because if they would have let him, now again, the coaches didn't think he earned it, but if he did earn it, it really could have helped their passing game just to have that guy who gets open very quickly in a short area, as you're talking about.
So one thing I was told was, and it seems obvious, but it's not. It was continue to watch him on punt return. Continue to monitor him, because if he can even improve upon last year, which was a tough start, but got better as the year went on, if he can improve himself on punt return, think about the advantage that gives him over any other wide receiver right now competing for that fourth or fifth spot. They don't have a natural punt return receiver. I don't think Tyree Cleveland is a standout punt returner. I don't know about Hazelwood or Joseph Knott. I mean, these guys are coming up from college. And as we pointed out, the Eagles sort of paid attention on bringing in bigger, more physical receivers who not all of them blaze like a 4.2 40 or anything, or even have the kind of short area punt return quickness that Covey has. So that's still a big calling card for him that helps him separate over the others. If he's even better this year 2, as a punt returner, that only really helps him in his case to be the last or second last, whatever, receiver.
Sure. Yeah. No, but it's just something to look at when we get to training camp. That's probably, that's going to be on our top 10 of questions in training camp. Not only special teams returns, but could someone grab hold of that slot role?
Yeah.
That to me is a factor, because every team has one.
Right.
And is Smith played inside? Yes, Smith can do that, but that's not You want him in that Z role. You'd like to have a guy who that's going to be his role, and they don't have that guy. Or at least they don't know they can depend on that guy.
Right. All right. I want to make an observation on tight end, but first I want to tell everybody it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer, and they can't wait to celebrate with you. So join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife in lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. Let's also pause real quick to hear a word from some other great sponsors. Okay, so tight end, Adam. As we've talked about on this pod, I was sort of skeptical of the Dan Arnold signing, that it means anything. And you said, hey, watch out. This guy can actually run a little bit. Clay Harbor joined us, and he said not only can run, but he blocks a little better than many people think, which I think remains to be seen. We'll have to check that out. And it certainly is not, no personnel person has ever said, hey, Dan Arnold can block a little bit.
Yeah, it's why he keeps moving on. But this dude, from what we're told, he's as advertised. Because remember, he played receiver in college. He moved to tight end. He was converted. So did you see Arnold when you were there?
I did. So the observation I was going to make was that I was impressed. I mean, I thought he had, again, what you look for from a pass catching tight end: good lateral quickness, turned up the field well. Thought he ran routes okay. I mean, he looked like he belonged. But I also thought Grant Calcaterra not only looked good, but also a little bit physically bigger, which was important for him. In fact, it's funny, I forgot to talk about this. He either caught a pass. I think he did catch a pass. He was running, and the defense was going off the field as he was continuing, to run. And defense all are celebrating. Somebody accidentally smacked him in the head from defense, and he turned around. He was mad, and I was like, "Wow, he looks like really upset." And then it triggered in my mind, "Oh, this guy's had a lot of concussion issues." Yep. That's the last thing he wants, is to be accidentally smacked in the head by a teammate. Yeah.
Did you? So what we're told on, and I'll ask you what you said. We'll go back to you in a second on what you saw. But on Arnold, he just moves differently than your normal tight end, and that's why these teams fall in love with him, because he's so athletic and can run in a straight line. But he's not the strongest guy in the world, and that's why he kept moving on. He signed a actually decent free agent deal in his career. But getting back to you here, and did you notice anything between? I know it's only OTAs, but the thing that I look for is movement, how these guys, because you don't want to make any hard judgments. But did you notice versus Calcaterra versus Arnold how they moved?
Well, I thought that Arnold moved more like a wide receiver would move, which is not a knock on Calcaterra. Calcaterra's a tight end. I mean, they're both tight ends, but I think, like you said, Arnold was a wide receiver in college. So I thought that there was just like a natural fluidity and his footwork. In fact, I didn't know what he looked like, and I didn't have a roster on me when I first went, and I was watching him catch passes because he was with the wide receiver group. I think it was a tight end wide receiver group, but this is just my first impression. I'm just watching a drill, and I actually thought he was a wide receiver.
Wow.
And sometimes you can look at a tight end and say, he's a tight end. There was something about Dan Arnold that when I first watched him and I didn't have the information in front of me, and I was like, who's this wide receiver? I don't remember this guy being on the road. And then I'm like, oh, that's Dan Arnold. So
right on that, he was number 46. I believe he was 46, which is an odd number.
I'm like, who's this fullback? No,
right. Well, I could be a fullback too, 46. But he's angular, like he's maybe an inch or so taller than Calcaterra, but Calcaterra has a smaller frame. Arnold's longer.
Yeah, I think Arnold has that length that you normally see out of wide receivers who have like longer arms and legs. Yeah,
I'm just interested to see, man, because if you give, I don't want to move too far ahead here, but if the guy makes the team and is actually active, whether he beats Calcaterra out and they cut Calcaterra or they both make it, but just gives them, because we saw when Calcaterra played, when Goddard was hurt, was Stall's as the wide tight end and Calcaterra as the move tight end. Calcaterra's another guy. He's so athletic. He's a little smarter than you'd like, but you just said that he look a little bigger, which is good to know. On that, when you see these guys move like that, that's a matchup nightmare for linebackers. It's just they move differently, and because that's why coaches always want Arnold, and then something happens, they see that he's kind of limited, he's not no physical guy, and he moves on. But if they're patient with Arnold, maybe he could help them.
Yeah, matchup nightmare for linebackers, especially Eagles linebackers. So no, training camp's gonna be really interesting there. And I now sort of believe more so than just like camp body signing that there's some real good competition there at tight end. And don't forget about Tyree Jackson, because it's not just Calcaterra versus Arnold. It's Tyree Jackson in the mix as well, assuming that Stoll is the number 2 guy behind Dallas Goedert.
He is, barring,
which he has to be, because he's the only one who can, he can block.
He's their wide tight end. No offense to Goddard, he's a terrific blocker, but Stoll's better.
Yeah,
as I've explained to me like 50 times, like he's just different. Like the funny thing is when he got to Nebraska with Juergens, I guess he's a year ahead of Juergens, but they're very close, as I understand it. Stoll was an athlete who had to learn how to block a little bit, and then he just got stronger and he took to it, and he's an incredible angle blocker. Like he's just and he loves it. Apparently, someone told me, so it's great. Look, coaches love him. And then the other thing before we get to defense, Juergens got some run behind Kelsey when Kelsey was not practicing, and then he also got some work at right guard with Steen. And did you hear anything on Driscoll? I didn't really hear it. I know
I did see him at the practice I went to. He was there. He was working in at some right guard.
Okay.
He's another guy that I thought looked more muscular on top. We mentioned that in the last podcast, and I feel like he's the 3rd horse in the race, but maybe you can't count out this 3rd horse because he's the only one of the horses that has actually played right guard before. So, I had to talk with Brian Baldinger about that. Did we talk about this last podcast?
No, did you see him?
Yeah, so he was at the OTA, and I said, Baldy, you're a former offensive lineman. I said, what is more difficult or more challenging? Being a guy who has played center for 2 years in college after moving there from tight end, trying to become a right guard, or a left tackle who only played left tackle in college and right tackle trying to play right guard. And, he obviously knew what I was talking about. And then he basically said, he almost said, you're not considering all the factors in this. It's not just about Tyler Steen or Cam Juergens. It's also about Jason Kelce. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, Jason Kelce's an undersized center. And for all these years, he's had Isaac Seumalo next to him. And Seumalo wasn't he wasn't like a 340-pound right guard, but he was so strong. So that when they put a combo block on somebody, Kelce could then leave and go up to the second level, cover up a linebacker, and know that Seumalo can handle it. He's like, imagine trying to block Dexter Lawrence right now, combo block. You're Jason Kelce. You want somebody next to you that's got meat on their bones, right? You want them to know, you want to know that person can hold up on 340-pound Dexter Lawrence as you leave the block to go to the second level. And he's like, to me, Tyler Steen makes a lot more sense there because he's got the big body for it, the athleticism for it. And I said, it's a great point. Makes a lot of sense. And to me, that almost makes not only Steen a good candidate if he can handle it, but even Jack Driscoll, who, again, who's bigger and has played right guard before. Juergens may be one of those guys who's, again, two years at tight end, 2 years at center. Right guard is not going to just come like in a finger snap. And
I agree.
It's not his fault, but every time Kelsey's not out of practice, they're putting Juergens at center. So that's taking the right guard reps away from him.
Yeah, the thing with Steen is he's really smart. And they kind of knew when they made this decision that they're going to move him to right guard. They really believe he could handle it. Now with Driscoll, and what's interesting what you said about not only Driscoll and some other players that they look bigger and so forth physically. When you see guys in shorts and jerseys, they actually look smaller generally. So that's actually, I don't want to say it's significant, but that's really good that you saw that, because over the years sometimes it's so hard to guess what a guy's weight is when you're at training camp, when you're not training camp, when you're in OTAs, because they can't wear pads. So you don't know sometimes. They're just wearing a jersey with a t-shirt under it. You're like, well, I can't really tell if they put weight on, but sometimes you could tell. You're seeing us on YouTube here. You could see their forearms are bigger. Oh, who is it? Miles Sanders. Okay, we saw Miles Sanders last year at OTAs. We're like, wow, how did he get bigger? His lower body. Remember how much bigger his thighs were?
Yep.
His calves.
Yep.
And it helped. He had a huge year.
He did. He avoided the lower leg injuries that plagued him throughout the year. No doubt about it. All right, let's switch to defense for a minute. First, we're going to remind you to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto, so check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's also hear from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam Geoff sent you. You will get the best deal. All right, defensively, again, sometimes difficult to really get a full evaluation on, and because they're running way more personnel out there in different spots than the offense is. Obviously, the big focus is on the front line. I thought Jalen Carter, again, they didn't run interior linemen in the 6-on-8s, as we call them. So it was really hard to, you didn't get a good idea of what he's going to look like, playing like a lot of snaps in the row. Same thing with Jordan Davis. But all reports were that those guys, as we've said many times on the podcast, were in good shape, were doing well, doing what coaches expected of them. And Nolan Smith was everywhere. I mentioned that. I mean, this guy was just everywhere.
And what you just said about Smith, when the reporters were not there, apparently what we're told is they definitely moved him around. Stack linebacker, he got the rush, covered. And again, it's OTAs. But the thing is, though, this is what's important. From a mental standpoint, when they got done, I think the coaches might have left Friday, maybe, or they maybe were done work on Friday. If they felt like he handled everything mentally and everything we've heard about him, picking up everything and being professional and coming in with the right attitude, which is what you would expect. Super high character guy, went to a big time college program, maybe the best in the country, other than Alabama. You would assume that if this is happening, that they're probably going to do some of these things in training camp. At least they could try them, because you don't want to not have done this and start doing this in training camp. There's too much going on. You can't wait to do that. This is the time to do that when the veterans aren't working a lot, and that's good. That you saw it, and what we're told is he actually kept doing it. And then, Jalen. Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Carter. I don't know his weight, because what's on the program, whatever they hand off to the media, sometimes it's not accurate.
Right.
I believe they're weighed every day, if I'm not mistaken. I know in training camp they're weighed every day.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely is way down from that pro day where he was overweight, and he 9 to 10 pounds overweight, which was interesting. But he's taken everything seriously. Jalen Carter's got a great attitude so far. It's only June. We'll see what happens when he's not around the club. Now they've broken until July. But Dave, the big thing, the real big story is Jordan Davis. We mentioned this 2 months ago that the super early word was in really good physical shape. Everything looks the same now. He's in great, I don't know about great shape, very good shape. That's
right.
Beauty to the eye of the beholder. They would only know that.
Right.
But really good shape, motivated, gets it. I don't want to say he has a chip on his shoulder for the way it's explained to me, but he understands. Not only was he did they trade up for him in the first round last year? Gets it, totally understands now what has to happen, and the commitment that you have to be potentially a great player. He gets all that now. I've kind of moved from cautiously optimistic with him to reasonably optimistic that he's going to be a good player for them over time, particularly this season. Now, what we don't know is, I didn't ask this question, but I may, because there's some leftover from OTAs we're probably going to have the next week or so. What I want to know is, are they still going to be a 3 defensive tackle starting unit like they were just about every game last year? And
what would be the alternative?
What's that?
The way they're built now, what would be the alternative? Because I don't see how they can be anything other.
Well, they did they did
interior.
Right, but they did some 43. But and I get it; they were more of a 34 front.
The 43 was really only when they were in rushing the passer. I mean, if they were in a first or second down mode, they had Linval Joseph out there with Fletcher Cox on one side and Javon on the other.
Right. And of course, before they were there, it was Davis when healthy with Cox and Hargrave.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't know that because again, they were only doing 7-on-7, so there's no way to really know.
They could do what Gannon did in year one, where he did not play as much of a 52 front. He played 3 down linemen and Jannard Avery. Was it 4 down linemen and Jannard Avery as a rush linebacker, or 3 down linemen?
It was weird though. Avery was not really rushing though.
No, you're right. I should say stand-up line. He was there to force the issue on run defense.
Yeah, it's weird, and he's always been a pass rusher. I didn't understand that, but okay, whatever.
That's what it was. It was 4. It was like a normal 4-man front because they didn't have a big 350-pound guy. They had Fletcher, they had Hargrave, they had Sweat, right, and they had Graham until he got hurt, and then they would bring in what's the guy's name? What was the guy's name I just said was the linebacker that they would
Jannard Avery, right.
Jannard Avery, right. So they only did that though to create their version there of a 5-man front, right, to try to eliminate the double teams up front in the run game. Because now the offensive lineman needed to block 5, right?
Yes, which is key. Yeah. Which is I get that. Oh, and Milt Williams obviously will be a factor one way or the other. But no, I just want to mention the Jordan Davis stuff because it's really good so far. But again, they're gone for roughly 6 weeks. How's he show up? You would expect, based on what I've heard. Did I read somewhere? Did he get a nutritionist or a cook or something? I read something
like that, dietitian or cook.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I mean, he's a really good kid, like really good kid. He's just when you're 20 years old and you get away with certain things in college because you can. Yeah. And you gotta get in better shape and you gotta be a professional, and he gets it. It's good. So the Georgia guys certainly get it. And then at linebacker, okay, so we mentioned Smith. He had some great stuff there. We added the stuff that over the 6 practices, what was being done, and then everybody knows it already. Who, if I'm sure you've read a lot of stuff about Christian Ellis. And the really cool thing about when you weren't there, or when the reporters weren't there, he got moved around a little bit. He got moved around a little bit from what we understand. So the question would be, but his main role is going to be backing up Nick Morrow at on the weak side. So he's just bigger. The Morrow's smaller. Yeah.
I mean, the way it was put to me was that Ellis has an opportunity. I mean, I think that, Morrow obviously got the first set of first-team reps alongside Nakobe Dean for a reason. But Christian Ellis made plays, man. And if that continues, I think he can overtake Nick Morrow to start alongside Nakobe Dean? Yes, I think he can, based on how I'm hearing it. Do I think it's going to happen or predetermined or destined? No, I would not say that at all. I think he has to continue to, I mean, the guy's not a draft pick or anything, and he was on the practice squad for almost all last. He's been cut from the practice squad and brought back a few times. So to say that the Eagles thought this guy was, going to be a starting linebacker in 2023 would not be true. But that being said, he's got an opportunity here. It's not a position that they have a tremendous amount of talent in. And if he continues to pick off passes in training camp, that's only going to help him out, obviously.
The cool thing about him is that this is his 3rd year with the team. I think probably we forgot that he was actually with him in Gannon's first year. Yep. And he actually was with Minnesota as an undrafted free agent. They gave him some decent coin on a guarantee, and they cut him. He's been a good story. Look, this has been a really good find, and it's sort of rare for the Eagles to actually have a guy with size at linebacker in the last couple of years.
And he can run, despite that size.
No, that was the big thing. The fact he's one of the fastest special teams players. You're absolutely right. And you saw in fact, we were told off the coaching tape last year, he looked really good when he got in. Whatever, I don't know how many snaps he got on defense, but then he filled in when Morrow didn't practice. He was with the ones. Yeah, look, Morrow is the clear favorite to win that job, and what we don't know is will they open it up, or because Morrow's a smaller guy now, and I know he's fast, and we had Paul Gunther on Patreon, and we'll probably have Paul on again, the former Raiders D coordinator who had started Morrow's 2nd year as a professional, and he said Nick was such a willing learner, and he got so good. I think the 3rd year they gave him the green dot because he was so smart. Yeah, and he went to a small school, but he's really small. As I said, we'll get to we're going to get to the D-backs in a second before we get out of here. It's just kind of nice. And I don't care whether Ellis is an undrafted free agent or not. He's got size. Doesn't matter now. Once you're here 3 years, it's about what can you do for us as a football team, and he's got something they don't really have at pure linebacker. Is he's got size.
Gotcha. Yes, he does. As far as the back end, I'm one thing I'm happy about. Like there are certain things you know to expect. Like a guy like Sidney Brown, it doesn't matter how much hype or acclaim comes with him as a third rounder. He's still a third rounder the day he shows up to Novacare, just like Nakobe Dean was last year. So for people who might be surprised that he's not running with the first or even second team yet, that's just how it goes. Like you're not a day one pick. You're a day, day two, second, third round pick on day two. You're got to earn your stripes. So one thing though, they didn't try to have any pretense about, at least from, again, what they did on Days Media, I don't know. But Reed Blankenship was with, for the first set of first teamers, Reed Blankenship was alongside Terrell Edmonds. In my mind, I went there thinking they're going to try to force feed Kevon Wallace in there because he's the veteran. He's been with the team the longest, but they didn't. I mean, they went straight to Blankenship with Edmonds on the first team, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Well, Blankenship's just a better football player. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, he's just so much better than.
I mean, he accomplished more in that last year alone than Kevon Wallace.
And what what an incredible. That's another guy. They nailed that one. We didn't hear a lot of hype with him. We heard he did well in OTAs last year. We didn't hear any hype like we heard on Covey last year. But this dude showed up in training camp. I remember it might have been the first week of August. We said, all right, this guy's making the team. It's the only thing we're going to come out with a bold statement. This guy's making it.
Yeah.
And he made it. And he had that pick off Rodgers where he read him. He's super smart. That school that he goes to, Middle Tennessee, it had Byard, Blankenship. I think there's another safety, isn't there?
There is. I can't remember who, but there's another safety from Middle Tennessee State.
Yeah. Cool story. So, yeah, look, if Brown doesn't start, it's because he's not ready. It's just they simply drafted Brown to start.
Right.
Look, it's not the end of the world. The guys at Blankenship, because of his lack of foot speed, is a good third. You'd rather him not start. The word is around Blankenship, the way that personnel people see him is, he'll get you out of a tough spot for 3 to 4 weeks, or 3 to 4 games. If it's more than that, the warts start to show up, and that's why he was not drafted.
Right. That'll be fun to watch. Also,
be a battle. Hell yeah.
And I think that that Reed Blankenship is best used not as a starter, but someone who can bail you out for a few games. But he can probably also be best used in sub packages. I think that they'll find a role for him as long as he continues to be pretty good. Javarius Ward is a corner. Didn't he go to No, he didn't go to Middle Tennessee. I'm sorry. I thought I messed up there. But yeah. There is. I'm trying to think of that third safety now.
No, you got it right. Middle Tennessee Ward, right? Yeah, he did.
Javarius Ward went to Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah.
How about that? And he's a corner though, right?
Yep.
Either way, it must be it's the new defensive back
Crazy. Yeah. Oh, and then so the thing with Brown is I'm going to check in on this because I know it's going to happen. He's not going to play box safety anymore. They're going to, because they're split. Their safeties are back. This is not the Jim Schwartz defense. The safeties they're back for the most part. So this is was explained to me that the term was it's a transitional phase for Brown. I like that term.
Okay.
From being more of a box safety. And that, when we made the joke after the draft, what we were told is if he covered the tight end, it's just because he was playing in the box and the tight end was in the box. That's why he covered him.
Right.
But now it's going to be more traditional of today's NFL, where you got the two safeties playing back and splitting. So, and then match, cover, deliver. They're still going to do that stuff. It's just look, he'll eventually start. Look, they know he's got to learn this defense and learn. It's just not the same way he was used at Illinois, but for what we're told, they're not worried at all, and this is expected, as you said, very well. And it's again, the good thing is because everything was passing, because it's mostly 7-on-7. These guys got plenty of work, like in terms of the offense is passing the football, here it comes instead of running it, like because in training camp it's kind of split and then it's situational. But here the good thing is they're passing drills.
Excellent. All right, so that's our OTA recap. It was good stuff, and it's funny. It just used to be there was a time when there would be like 20 OTA practices to talk about. Now there's 6. So we gave you everything we could and everything we found out.
We got more though. We'll get
more.
Yeah, we're gonna have one more. But yeah, that's the gist of it. Again, no hard. like we definitely went inside OTAs. That's going to be the topic of the show, but
you
don't make any bold statements. You go by, okay, was the guy in shape? Does he know what he's doing?
Right.
And Rick Spielman on that Patreon told a great story about the guy that's available for trade because they can't. Daniil Hunter. That was the one. How they didn't want to. I'd said, Rick, was there ever a player you knew right away, like, okay, we might have gotten this right? There was only OTAs. He goes, Daniil Hunter, Andre Patterson, the D-line coach, said it was obvious that this guy was unusual the way he moved for his size, and that's what you're looking for.
I recall the Eagles. This is way back in 06 or so. I recall, and I'm new on the beat, so I didn't have as many like inside sources at the time. But what I did have, Trent Cole was a guy who very quickly, he was a 5th round pick. He was out of Cincinnati, undersized guy. They were just throwing darts at every undersized defensive end at that, time. But I don't know if it was like, I had a chat with Heckert or Bannon. I don't remember who it was, but I remember there being like more than your normal enthusiasm after OTAs about a 5th round pick. And it turned out, Trent Cole wound up having a great Eagles career, especially for being a 5th round pick, but regardless, but you're right. It's rare, but when it happens, you get that sense,
Well, though in 18, when I saw Mailata, I've mentioned this before. It was just comical. He had no idea what he was doing, but I just remember saying, if this kid ever gets it, holy smokes, because you don't see 6'8", 380-pound guys. Might have been 400. Who the hell knows? Because we know he was 402 at some point in his Eagles career. I remember us putting that out there. Now he might be 375. He looks great, but you can't teach size and movement, and that's the thing that you're looking for. It's just it's the unusual stuff. And then, of course, one more for you. I think his name was Alex McAllister. Was that his name?
I remember him from Florida. Yeah, 7th round.
Florida State. Yeah, the
stick guy was like a tree branch. I mean, he was
right. Exactly. It's like a stick figure.
Yeah.
I knew. I was like, "There's no way this guy makes it. He's too skinny.
Yeah.
No way he makes it." But he can move. It's like a dart throw.
I remember him being a fan. All the fans thought he was going to make the team because he was all traded up and all that. But no, he was easily blockable.
It's too thin. He had to be. I don't know how tall he was, but he had to be like 225, whatever, as a defensive end. No chance.
Right.
Anyway.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.